maybe just a couple of words how Dia differentiates multi and cross-chain belief. And I mean, that's also the reason I think why we were so excited to integrate with Fuse, because we believe there's obviously more than one ecosystem, and transparent data is a connectivity layer between these ecosystems to enable them to build applications and interoperate. But yeah, happy to speak a bit more about how DA differentiates later, just as a quick intro.
No worries, man. When you're passionate about something, it just flows. So I get it for sure. Yeah, everyone, that was Paul. He's a co-founder of Dia. I just wanted to give him a little introduction on who exactly he was and what sparked them creating and actually co-founding Dia. And it is a DAO, as he discussed just moments ago. Looks like we got Oren has joined us from Ola. Oren, would you like to give an introduction on what exactly? Because not all of our listeners understand what Ola is. Here at Voltage, we work with you guys hand to hand on a regular basis, and you're integral to our actual operation. So very much easy for us to explain and expose our users to it, not so much for others who are not familiar with the lending and borrowing and protocols that are there. So, Oren, if you want to speak.
Hey, so can you guys hear me okay? Cool. All right, so you actually have Danny Lovey from Ola Finance. I'm leading up business development, in charge of strategy and partnerships, and kind of my role with Ola Finance is to help onboard partners and source the initial requirements, the initial configurations for their lending networks. So what Ola Finance does is we provide lending as a service. So essentially, we're partnering with these very promising projects like Fuse, of course, and we are launching them their own lending network, so that way they can offer lending and borrowing services to their communities while still controlling the lending network, meaning they can configure the different parameters to their own liking. They can decide which tokens are included on the lending and borrowing side. They have a custom UI, they have it to their own domain. So being in control of your own lending is really a powerful thing. And what all the way Ola distinguishes itself is by forming these strategic long-term partnerships, so that we don't just provide you ownership over your own lending network, but we've been working very closely with Fuse to support ongoing feature requests that they have, and constantly rolling out new upgrades to their lending network, to all of the lending networks we support, and just making sure that the lending network's the best it can be, the safest it can be. Yeah, that's Ola.
Yeah, for sure. Now, definitely, long-term vision seems to be there with Ola. I saw you guys just launched on Boba Network as well, so very exciting stuff going over there for Ola. We have Robert has joined us under the Fuse network account. Robert, if you want to, I don't know if we actually got him up as a speaker just yet. We want to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves and what they feel is kind of the ethos behind their project. You can even tell us a little bit about yourself personally and what got you into wanting to create, the Fuse network and build the ecosystem. So I think it's very much important that the underlying chain is what we're building on top of. It has the right mindset to create these collaborations and partnerships to grow ecosystems. So very much interested to hear. Robert, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of give an introduction on your role at Fuse and what exactly you saw the vision. You've seen the vision, if you've helped cultivate it. What brought Fuse to the point of needing and wanting the resources of Dia and Ola? Kind of give us a backdrop here.
Yeah, thank you, Zach, and thank you for hosting the AMA. I'll give you a very brief introduction. And what I'll do is help you sort of understand how Fuse came about as a layer one, right? I've been involved now with the project since DeFi summer 2020, so coming up to 2 years. The project was launched initially by Mark Smargan, who's the CEO. and Mark's been involved with. In particular, Mark was involved with another project previously that was involved in creating local currencies for local municipalities over cities, essentially. And this is sort of our North Star. What we're talking about here is real world adoption. It's what's ultra important to us. We're always looking at the long term, essentially. We've built things a little bit different. A lot of L1s, which is what Fuse is. We're an L1, Ethereum compatible. A lot of other sort of players out there will focus on consensus mechanisms and the latest sort of ultra mathematical consensus mechanism to take to try and compete with the likes of Ethereum, etc. That's not our approach. We start with the end goal in mind. So a lot of the projects that you'll see on Fuse Network in general are sort of real world implementations. You'll see a UBI project. You'll see sharing economy projects like the People Eat project, which is a sort of Deliveroo competitor with a token model behind it. Really encourage anyone to go and look at People Eat, for example. Flambo being another one. A sharing economy project allows you to borrow, everyday items. Can be power tools or a surfboard or a bike or whatever it might be, with a token model behind it, which allows you to insure those rentals. What we're seeing right now within the Fuse ecosystem is a sort of an inflection point, a turning point. Our North Star is these real world projects that I'm talking about. What's ultra important to make an L1 successful is to have those long term goals in mind, those long term projects in mind. But obviously, in the meantime, to of course focus on something which is ultra important, which is liquidity, essentially, which means DeFi, and it means having decent TVL, decent amounts of liquidity, and also asset diversity, essentially. So having different types of tokens, different types of projects on the platform, whether it's meme coins, the likes of Dogelon, etc., whether it's governance tokens, whether it's stable coins, etc. That's what really allows for money, for assets to move around the ecosystem, and for people to be able to to launch within the Fuse ecosystem in a way that is in a sort of liquid environment, in a way that's productive, essentially. And what D is bringing to the game in particular is, it allows us to sort of make our DeFi ecosystem much more robust, much safer for people who are using the different DeFi protocols, whether it's Voltage and therefore Ola Finance and the lending platform, whether it's Sushi, whether it's Beefy Finance, whatever DeFi platform. Dia are bringing something which is ultra important, which is a huge extra layer of safety, essentially, and that's what excites us in this partnership in particular.
And real quick, just piggybacking off of what Robert is saying here, I think it only made sense for Ola and Fuse to work together, because Fuse has this vision of supporting these different projects in their long-term growth by providing them this strong and sustainable infrastructure to support them. And in the same way that Fuse is supporting the growth of these projects, that's kind of Ola's mission as well, which is to kind of enable DeFi lending and borrowing services for all. We want to deepen the number of assets that are supported by lending and borrowing services while still mitigating the risk associated with them. So essentially supporting projects in their growth is something that both Fuse and Ola align deeply on. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the insight, and it's very much impactful to have a chain that's focused on not just TVL, but the actual growth and kind of giving back to the community. At least putting the tools in place for the communities that they reach to be able to utilize them. Right. For those who have joined from their respective communities that don't necessarily know what Voltage is and how we play a role here. Voltage is a DeFi hub on the Fuse network. We've partnered with Ola that offers lending services as well. And they're in connection. They have a platform that they actually operate from our hub as well. So it's very, very interesting to see the development between something like Ola, a Voltage, and how, oracles are provided to keep, price points and have accurate data to mitigate risk, right? So we touched on this a little bit earlier. And Danny, I want to direct this question towards you. In particular, oracles are necessary to avoid price manipulation. What could, some or a bad actor creating price manipulation on a lending protocol? What's the potential risk there, and how do you guys mitigate this?
Yeah, sure. So, using a reliable oracle is more than just extremely important. It's an absolute necessity, and it's one of the very first things we do when we're working with a new partner to determine what assets they want to support. So before I kind of directly answer that question, I want to give a little background to the audience as to how we're using these oracles. And essentially, when we need a price feed for an asset, we're querying the Oracle's contract on chain, and we're using the price that it delivers in our calculations. So just to kind of put it to numbers, if an Oracle says that somebody's collateral is $100 and they borrow 50% against it, so they borrow $50, that's a lot different than saying someone's collateral is worth $100,000 and now allowing them to borrow $50,000 against it. And this isn't just kind of a made up example. We've seen this before. So if you look at the cream hack back in, I believe it was November 2021, what we saw was a manipulation of the collateral asset. So essentially, the value of it was inflated to be this astronomical price, like way higher than it was actually worth. And using that inflated price, a bad actor was able to create bad debt by borrowing a lot more money than they were supposed to be allowed to. And after doing so, the collateral asset, they can crash it back to its original price, and they can be left with this bad debt that was created. So this is a very real issue, and this is talking about manipulating the collateral price upward. But at the same time, you could also manipulate the price of an asset on the borrow side upward, and that could force people into these liquidations as the value of what they have borrowed is rising and rising and rising. They're creeping closer to that liquidation factor, and they can get forced into a liquidation. So it's a kind of a scary thing. So of course we take mitigations against these. So for one, talking about manipulating the borrow side asset where the price rises, we do have a very interesting feature where we can whitelist liquidators, where essentially should the borrow side price go up and up and up and force liquidations, we can say, okay, liquidations will only be performed in this first however many seconds by these parties. We whitelist them, and that removes the incentive for a bad actor to manipulate those prices. And on the other hand, and this is kind of the whole topic of the conversation here, it's partnering with reliable oracles. And I know Dia's data processing approach mitigates the risks of manipulating low liquidity markets on dexes. And I don't know if this is a good smooth transition for someone to speak, but we aim for these strong oracle partners not only to help against the manipulation of these markets, but also partnering with oracles is allowing lending network creators a choice. I mean, to decide which oracle they want to use for the assets in their lending network. Ultimately, it's their lending network. They deserve the choice of which oracle to use, as certain oracles are better in certain circumstances for different assets. And likewise, it also allows us to have a larger option of assets that can be listed, because certain oracles don't support certain assets and other oracles do support them. So all of it is giving more choice to the lending network creator while also mitigating the risks of these bad actors, as you said.
maybe if I can add a bit here, Danny, you really highlighted the importance of oracles for lending markets, because I think lending markets are the #1 DeFi application where oracle fees are being tried to manipulate, and people try to pull funds from exactly the mechanisms you described. And it speaks very much to Ola to not also only provide one oracle like us, but others, to have the user in the end, or the individuals pulling and spinning up these lending markets, to decide which oracle to use. Something which we believe is extremely important when it comes to oracles is the transparency, because there is, I think, too little transparency where the end user is actually aware where a price feed is actually coming from. And if you are borrowing Ethereum and providing Ethereum as collateral, I think it's pretty hard, or it's pretty easy to find a good oracle. But especially for long tail assets, it becomes much trickier, and the risk of manipulation increases. So the transparency for the end user is absolutely vital to understand on which data actually a price feed is being built upon on. And this is really, I think, a core differentiator of DIA, that we don't pull third-party price data, but we're integrated in various SEXs and DEXs on different ecosystems. So we're able to also provide a feed of markets which are specific to an ecosystem, because a liquidation happens within that ecosystem. So Ola markets or voltage markets using Ola on Fuse, they'll liquidate within Fuse. Obviously, they're bridges, but the relevance of a market price within one ecosystem can become extremely relevant. So we are enabling, hence our partners, to select the markets which we're taking into consideration when building a feed, and we're providing the transparency to the end user, so he's aware where actually does the data come from, and what's the methodology being used to calculate, for example, a volume weighted average, where we look at 120-second windows usually, combining these cleanse outliers, and provide with this a price point which is for everyone transparent, and at the same time extremely versatile. So we can go way beyond an Ethereum lending application, but we could, I don't know, build a lending market from around for possibly 6,000 assets with our feeds. Some are riskier than others, but the transparency helps you to understand how risky they are.
I think that's very important, and that's a feature that I wasn't actually privy to before this space. Letting everyone know that the where you're pulling data from is very much important and transparent. I think that's a good quality to have. I'm very much interested in maybe you guys have this in the plans. You know, we see a lot of focus for oracles in the price data for crypto in particular, or stock data. I'm curious is when we start finding like consumer items, right? Like on secondary markets and things along those lines. Are you guys interested in trying to pursue, because I see oracles in the future for more consumer-based products outside of just the crypto world. Do you guys have any plans for something like that on the roadmap? I think that would be very interesting to start integrating data that's reliable and, you know, it can be trusted for second party, or I would say secondary markets.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, our core product, which really enables us to provide so many different assets on different chains. Here we really calculate the data by pulling each and every trade on various markets, so hundreds of thousands of trades, and using different methodologies then to calculate an asset price. But we also use premium gas quotes. So we are integrating different sources where we don't have direct access. So, for example, stock markets where we're not able to pull each and every equities trade of an Apple stock. And here we work with reliable partners who can provide us and broaden really much the scope. And as you're saying, we are, I guess, pretty fast evolving into an age of Web3, where not everything is just related to crypto native assets, but also outside information becomes more and more important. And we are adding more and more partners to exactly provide this data in a reliable way, and we help them to make this data accessible not only then on Ethereum but on, I don't know, various parachains, or as well on Fuse for sure. And this is for sure a use case which today is pretty nichey, but will become extremely relevant. Additionally to this, with, I guess, the emergence of the interest of virtual worlds becoming a metaverse, and P2E randomness is something which is more and more requested because it's something you don't have natively on chain. A product which we basically just launched in alpha, and will be able to provide this also for a multi-chain ecosystem. So making randomness not only accessible on Ethereum, but on chains where actually these applications, which require more economic consensus mechanisms, will be deployed. So broadening our scope in the past months from really our core product, crypto asset prices, to using high quality third-party data providers, as well as providing randomness on various chains in a very economic and efficient way.
Yeah, very abstract and interesting idea, the idea of having oracles and price feeds for consumer products. I think it's a good few years out yet, but we often talk about the need for stable assets, stable coins in particular, when transacting in the sort of more real world. But what if, could we imagine a future in which everything just has dynamic pricing essentially, and based on market demand? The problem we have right now is that you can't be paying 1 Bitcoin for a certain product one day, and then for it to drop in price against the dollar the next, and for it to have a completely different sort of value essentially. We could definitely imagine a future in which everything is just, it's really sort of abstract and out there, but everything is just priced dynamically essentially. Stable coins are perhaps needed less. It's and it would require some very sort of complicated algorithms, but it's the possibilities are endless essentially when you start to consider what oracles could do long term in the consumer world in particular.
And that's also, we don't try to kind of forecast every possible use case, but we see a lot of inbound from people just hitting up our forum and defining what they need, and then we're trying to address that need. So it is really a user and builder driven product journey we're going through. So randomness, obviously, I mean, was on the radar, but it was also very much driven by the need of people building things. And so this doesn't require to know anyone from the core team personally. You just hit up the forum or ping us on Telegram and define your need. And in the past, we've been fairly quick to act these needs and deploy them for you.
This is what people who are living in the world of TradFi and traditional finance don't understand. They don't realize the complete lack of friction, basically the ease with which projects, open source projects in the crypto space, are able to collaborate with each other. There's no need for heavy contracts and ultra sort of complicated SLA agreements and multi-million-dollar sign-up agreements and whatnot. We just start working together. Essentially, we just get moving. And obviously, there's the ease with which someone an L1 like Fuse can integrate with DIA, and then the ease with which DIA can then integrate with a voltage on top of Fuse. But then, of course, you start to see the immediate sort of, the cross-platform opportunities. DIA will be looking at all the different DeFi platforms on Fuse and other projects maybe. Fuse will be looking immediately at all the different projects that are integrated into DIA, and the speed at which we're able to collaborate with each other, innovate is just, it's never before been seen. And that's one of the things that excites me most about this space.
Yeah, I mean, the Web3 space, the agility to move exactly as you said is definitely a plus, a benefit. I kind of, Paul touched on it a minute ago. You know, when we were the real question I wanted to hit on, I want to at least offer to everyone is what's the next leg up? You know, for Ola and for Fuse. When I say that, what I mean is what's the in the next 6 months. What's the number one goal? What do we want to accomplish? I let Robert. He was kind of in the flow of his thoughts there. I let him continue. You know, what do we see happening in the next 6 months for Fuse? And what would you like to see happen?
In the context of Ola and therefore lending on Voltage, the big thing that's going to be happening now, one of the things that one of the doors that Dia has opened up here is the ability to accelerate the speed at which, or accelerate the speed at which we can onboard new tokens, new coins to lending instances. A lack of Oracle has made that difficult, essentially. With an Oracle, it's much easier for us to add, for example, add tokens which are more volatile in terms of price to the lending protocol. So it's going to be really interesting to see some of the requests coming in. If there's anyone listening, or if you've got ideas about tokens that you'd like to see added to the lending protocol, added to Ola on Voltage, we'd definitely be keen to hear about them, keen to study about them. We can have multiple different instances to be seen. Essentially, this Voltage is a DAO, which means that anyone can come into the forum.voltage.finance, and they can make suggestions essentially as to which tokens they might like to see added to the existing instance that you can see there. So the existing AMM, essentially the existing lending instance, and also suggest creating brand new lending instances on Voltage. So it's going to be really interesting to see and exciting to see that grow, basically, to see liquidity grow, to see asset diversity grow. So yeah, it's time will tell, essentially, and it'll be interesting to watch.
Definitely. And for over at Ola, would you like to kind of give an insight on the next 6 months, or what are you looking to have done? What's a milestone? What's a good indicator of growth and progress over there at Ola for the next 6 month outlook?
Yeah, so I mean, we're providing lending as a service here. We're trying to take this white labeled approach where our partners are the ones in the spotlight, and we're kind of more of just these technology providers. So I guess first and foremost, our primary goal is to support the needs of our partners. So as Robert mentioned, expanding the list of assets, increasing liquidity. These are metrics that we definitely want to support them in and basically implement for them or with them rather. And while we do this, parallel to doing this, we want to continue to push the bounds of what Ola as a project offers. So we're constantly developing new features to roll out to our partners, and all of these features are on an opt-in basis, meaning the creators themselves, they don't have to accept them, but our goal is to make them pretty sweet so that they'll want to accept them. So one example is these highly capital efficient stable pools that we're building and we're almost deployed with, which will allow liquidity providers who are providing liquidity to a stable pool on the DEX side. They will also be earning fees from the lending side of the network, thereby increasing their APY, because the liquidity in these stable pools will be kind of dual purposed and also support the liquidity in the lending network. So now we're seeing increased TVL on both parts, the DEX and the lending network. We're seeing higher APYs for liquidity providers, and ultimately just much greater capital efficiency, which is always a big one in DeFi. So Our goal is to support our partners, offer them more opportunities, and continue to expand, continue to onboard new partners, and integrate with new service providers like Dia and whoever's willing to help expand kind of in our mission of bringing DeFi borrowing and lending services to new communities. You're welcome. Come on board.
Yeah, I love to hear it. I love to hear the expansion, the growth, the long term view from all three of the projects here today. I'm just curious. That was covers the bulk of the questions that I had and kind of what I wanted to allow our community to hear. Curious if anyone in the space currently has any questions that they want to ask any of these projects. We could bring you guys up and take a moment to try to sift through a few of them. If not, that basically concludes our space. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone joining, taking the time out of your day, and I think that will conclude our space.
Thanks, Zach, so much for moderating this, and thanks, guys, for joining. Danny, Robert, was really great to have you all here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having us on board, and we're looking forward to the partnership and the future growth. Thanks for all of you, Robert, Paul. Thanks everyone for creating this and putting this together, and Dia, of course. This is great. Hopefully we can do this again.
Looking forward to it very much. So,
thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Thanks for listening.
Guys.